Over 7 million different animals inhabit our planet.
Because we're doing hippos and we've been wanting to do it for so long, we decided to change up our platform a little bit, and we have a surprise guest today.
What can they teach us?
I always like to tell the listeners, why should we care about hippos?
Yeah, hippos are an amazing animal. I mean, top to bottom, all the way up and down. I can't say enough about hippos and how incredible they are as animals. I mean,
Many species are in crisis and need your help. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.
Hey, welcome to the All Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
Hi, Angie. That sound of a hippo cracks me up, and it just brings back the memories of you and Corbin going at it. You know, who had the better hippo sound?
Our hippo off. Yes. I remember that very fondly because allegedly I lost. So
You did. You did. Sorry. I'm sorry.
it's because I was laughing so hard that I couldn't sound normal or hippo vocalization normal for whatever that's worth.
We've been waiting to do this one for a while. We put hippo on the list. Corbin asked us to do hippos. We have been wanting to do hippos, and we had to wait because Angie, big announcement for this week's interview.
Yes, Chris. So exciting. Last week I got to sit down and chat with Christina Gorsuch of the Cincinnati Zoo, who is currently the curator of mammals. And she had the exquisite pleasure of being part of the very famous hippo Fiona in her sensational journey. And Fiona's story includes the fact that she was born prematurely, which there's no records of that, both in wild or living under human care. So stay tuned for our next episode. Well, stay tuned for this episode so you can learn all about hippos. But yes, that interview is going to be amazing. She's going to share with us at All Creatures Podcast the journey of what it was like to be a part of Team Fiona at Cincinnati Zoo.
Yeah, she exploded.
I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Yeah. She became like one of my new BFFs. I have a lot of them, so I can't say my only BFF, but yeah, she's awesome. And the interview I think is just really amazing. If you haven't heard Fiona's journey, or even if you have, it's really, really incredible.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because Fiona is probably one of the most famous animals in the past, 1 to 2 years? Was it a year and a half ago, roughly?
Oh, yeah, about a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's incredible. And that's part of her journey is how the Cincinnati Zoo really took an amazing stance to go ahead and document and share every trial and tribulation of her battle to survive and then thrive.
Right. No, I mean, it was a risk for the zoo to do that, and they were apparent and showing off this is what's going on. And if Fiona tragically died, the public would have known, and there would have been a lot of tears and stuff on both sides. So
yes, Christina's recount of the first 2 days of Fiona's life is it's pretty interesting. I'm not giving any spoiler alerts.
Yeah, okay.
She's I really enjoyed her interview. Of course, I enjoy all the interviews, but she was very candid and easy to talk to, and we had a lot of laughs. So, and you'll learn a lot too.
Yeah.
So check that out. But you're going to want to stick with us today because we're doing hippos, and we've been wanting to do it for so long. We decided to change up our platform a little bit, and we have a surprise guest today.
Yes. In a little bit. Yes, we do. We do. And then
and hopefully if this guest cooperates, I will be entering into another hippo vocalization challenge to see if I can enhance my batting average from 0 to 1
0
1 to 1 or whatever sports analogy that would be.
You'll be batting 500. Yeah, you'll be batting 500. So I'll be the judge. I'll be the blind judge. I won't know who's doing what. Oh, I know your voice. It doesn't matter. We'll see how well you've improved. I know you've been practicing.
I have,
every day.
and I'm going to even actually block the camera so I can't see you. So because the laughter is what is what really hinders me throughout most of my life. It sometimes gets me into trouble.
Okay.
I love laughing.
Yeah. Yes. So the hippo is also called the river horse, right?
Oh, yes.
So that's like one of the reasons we love them.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's their name. Their name comes from the two Greek words, hippo, meaning horse, and potamus, meaning river.
Oh, yeah. Okay. There you go. And it's from Greeks, right? The Greeks are what called them the river horse.
Correct. Well, and today we'll be talking about the common hippo, but it's also known as the Nile hippo or the large hippo as well.
Right.
So not to be confused, I believe at one point in time, Christina calls it the Nile hippo, and I was like, wait, is there something?
Yeah,
is there another species I don't know about?
Yeah.
So
yeah, there is 5 subspecies, and then we have the pygmy hippo, which we're going to talk about a little bit. Yeah.
We'll definitely touch on that. That's one near and dear to my heart, as I was not a caretaker for them at the Lincoln Park Zoo, but they housed them at the zoo, and so would get to go behind the scenes and hang out with Huey, and it was awesome.
Yeah, and I remember the San Diego Zoo had pygmy hippos, and I can't remember what other zoo. I don't know if it was the Bronx Zoo. Somebody else had them that I've seen, which is interesting because they're endangered. Only a couple thousand left.
Sure, Chris, and that's definitely going to be one of the big take-home messages today. And the IUCN's current count is less than 2,500, so very, not very many for the pygmy hippo. And what was really disconcerting to me, I guess I hadn't done a lot of research into it because it's not highlighted in the media as much as, of course, our beloved rhinos and elephants, is the fact that the large hippopotamus, the Nile hippo, the common hippo, is also been classified as vulnerable with a stable population. However, it's declined dramatically in many, many different habitats throughout Africa. And their population is somewhere between, it's estimated to be between 115,000 to 130,000, which, considering they roam all through most of Africa. That's not very much. And the populations are very, very fragmented.
Yeah. If you look at the range map, and I always try to post these on the show notes, they used to range. I put almost the lower 2/3 of Africa, but it's almost like 3/4. It's just really the Sahara Desert isn't where they were at all, but they did go all the way up the Nile, all the way to the Mediterranean, which is really interesting. That's their historical range, but you look at their range today, and you're right. It is so many small pockets, throughout Africa that they've lost so much of their habitat. It's really incredible.
Yeah. And of course it should be noted that their habitat, they enjoy hanging out in rivers, swamps, lakes, but they also need the grasslands to forage at nighttime. And currently the hippo is native to 29 African countries, the large, the common hippo. But in certain countries like the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the population's declined 95%. 95%.
And I would just say, stay tuned for, we have a lot of great things today. But one of the things we're going to cover at the end is just how dangerous are hippos? Is it fact or myth? And so we'll kind of get into that a little bit towards the end and talk about, hippos. And it makes sense with some of their behavior.
Sure.
With that.
Yeah. And then if you stick with us till the end, I have a super fun fact about me being a mom, of course, about when they lactate, the color of their milk. It is not white or cream or anything like that. It is a unique color. And they are the only mammal in the world to have this color milk. So,
okay, there you go.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, I'll stay tuned this time, Angie.
Thank goodness, because we need you here, Chris. I can't do this by myself. Nobody would want that.
3 hours later, I know. You're really excited for this one. Now, hippos are semi-aquatic mammals, so they live half the time in the water, or actually most of the time in the water, and then they go out to forage at night, which we'll get to. They are even-toed ungulates.
Yay, ungulates. Aerodactyls.
Yes. And related to buffalo, deer, cattle, those types. Now, what I found really interesting about doing my research, they used to think hippos were related to pigs. or swine, because of their teeth. Their molars were very similar. They thought this for forever, ever since they started studying natural history and classifying mammals. It wasn't until DNA testing came around that they realized, oops, no, hippos aren't really that closely related to pigs at all. Their actually closest relatives are cetaceans.
Right.
Whales and dolphins.
That blew my mind. I'm like, I hope Chris covers this in evolution. Yeah.
Yeah, I will a little bit, but yeah, I just was like, wow, that was really crazy. So Angie, a couple things I was reading, and I don't know, you give me your opinion. Some things said they were the third largest mammal. Others said they were the second largest mammal. So I pulled up some statistics. I mean, obviously the elephant's the largest land mammal. Then it's really a debate between rhinos and hippos. Now, hippos can be 11 feet long, or 5 feet at the shoulder, 1.5 meters tall, and they weigh up to 3,200 kilograms or 7,000 pounds.
Or 2 to 3 tons.
Right. Now, granted, rhinos are a little bit taller because they could be 6 feet tall at the shoulder, 1.8 meters, but they weigh less. And this is male rhinos, around 2,300 kilograms.
And what species of rhinos? Is this black rhinos or white rhinos? Because that was going to be the trick, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was. I think this was the white rhino. So
okay, because that is the bigger of the two rhinos.
Right. Or, even Indian rhinos are pretty big too, right? So
yeah. Correct me. Yeah. The whites are the bigger of the two rhinos in Africa.
And rhinos only weigh up to 5,000 pounds. Now, elephants, obviously 11 feet at the shoulder, 3.3 meters. They weigh 13,000 pounds or 6,000 kilograms. So there's no debate there. So really the debate's between hippos and rhinos. Which one's bigger, I guess. Hippos are heavier. Rhinos are a little bit taller.
Yeah, probably the popular media. Most things say that they are the third largest living land mammal, but there's outliers, I believe, in either category. And it probably depends on, is it the male or the female of a hippo?
Right.
What's their age? And I read an interesting tidbit that I didn't have time to double check with the scientific literature, but it had said something that a male hippopotamus grows throughout most of its life.
Yeah, it doesn't stop.
Kind of
right?
like your nose and your ears if you're a guy.
Yeah. Thanks. My nose doesn't grow.
Oh yeah, you keep telling yourself that, buddy.
Yeah.
But so so if that's the case, then it just depends. Obviously.
Well, they're big. They're massive.
They are.
They're just big, huge, and massive.
Any way you slice the cheese. They are. They're definitely. They're big and they're impressive, and everybody knows what they look like because there's cartoons and books. They're just found throughout media.
Yeah.
But I think people don't quite appreciate the size or the fact that the hippo has 4 webbed toes that splay out to distribute weight evenly, and of course support on land, but also when it's walking through the water. And their body is gray, but they have tones of purple and pink, brownish pink coloring around their eyes and their ears. Their bodies are covered with a scarce amount of thin hair, except for the bristle-like hair on their heads and their tails. And one of my favorite parts, as long as I'm not being affected by it, but is their flat, triangular, almost like tail. And why I say I don't want to be affected by it, because I'm sure people may or may not know, but a lot of times they will spray excrement to mark its territory, which is a natural behavior in the wild. But if you're visiting them behind the scenes, like I've had the chance to do on numerous occasions, that they can sometimes spray you. So you just have to be. But they're herbivores, and I will still stand by the fact that herbivore poo is not that bad.
I would stay tuned, though. There's some interesting things about their diet that I found. A couple, some recent articles, scientific literature coming out about their dietary behavior.
I will stay tuned, then. I will not fall asleep.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to be here talking today about hippos. I forewarned Chris. I said, we might have to do 2 segments of the hippos because I think I have 30 slides. Couldn't stop myself.
That's all right.
No, nobody wants to hear all the little weird facts.
Yeah, we'll do it.
I just love them.
It's an extended episode. We'll get through it.
I just love them so much.
Right. No, and their skulls are really interesting too. So I have a good picture that I'm looking at. I mean, obviously, if you've seen a hippo open their mouth, it's kind of scary because they have really large canines and incisors, which is, especially the males, they get really nasty when they fight. also their eyes are really, I mean, this is what's so crazy about natural history. When you look at these animals, their eyes are really on top of their skull. So they've evolved that way. So when they're just, floating on top of the water, it's almost like an alligator. Well, crocodiles, they're good friends in Africa, where they're floating and they have their eyes way up top so they can see better, and their nostrils, right?
Oh, yes, Chris. And I've been blessed enough on a couple different occasions to have the experience of seeing wild hippos. The common hippos, the large ones in Africa. Yeah. And in both occasions I was in Zambia. One time I was on the Luanga River with my soon-to-be husband, John. We weren't engaged yet, but that's where it solidified the deal that he was all right. But we were in North Luanga Park in Zambia, and we were on the Luanga River. And even with binoculars, we were up on a cliff looking at them down in the river because the water, it was the dry season, so there wasn't a ton of water. But they're just like looking for alligators or crocodiles. You're wondering, is that a log or is that a hippo? But the trick is with hippos, they're usually, of course, they're typically in herds or bloats, as they're often called. So you see a lot of these little log-looking eyes, if you will, and then you know that that's it's a hippos. So I mean, it's just fun, and I think that's what always inspired me to make the hippo calls, is that I've got to hear them both in Luanga, and then another time I was with one of my best friends, Nani, and her future husband, Bob, at the time, and we were on the Zambezi. And lots of hippos, and we were staying at a lodge just off the river, and so I could hear them vocalizing all night long. And it was it was pretty incredible. That one, both experiences were awesome.
Very jealous, very jealous.
Solidified my love for them and trying to perfect their vocalization. And I guess I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd be doing a podcast on them. However,
and be making hippo noises.
However, it makes a lot of sense because they're just a really fascinating creature, and due to the current climate of habitat fragmentation and poaching and things we'll talk about further on in the podcast, they are in need of more help and more awareness. So I'm here to raise awareness about them today, because I feel like sometimes they're forgotten about.
Absolutely. Yeah, people. I love hippos, but you don't hear about their conservation, right?
No, and I'll talk a little bit about that when I get to the very end, when I pick my conservation organizations, because just a little spoiler alert, they were hard to find, if you can believe that.
I was lucky enough because when Ashley was working at San Antonio Zoo, she got to work with the hippos, and, I got to obviously, got a lot of my zoo experience following her around doing stuff. And, maybe we get to repro, I could talk about, the story, but she had to actually give the female hippo her birth control each day. So, it was a shot of progesterone. She trained her to open their mouth, and she would squirt it into her mouth. So she wouldn't cycle and get pregnant, because they didn't want calves. They didn't need to breed that pair. So anyways, got to be up close with them, and just amazing.
Our spouses are so cool.
Yeah, they are. They did some cool stuff. Now here's a word, Angie. Here's something, talking about description, just before we jump into bring our guest on, I guess. Graviportal. I saw this word. I've never heard this before.
I don't know. I'm at a loss, which is rare.
So when I do my research, obviously I try to avoid Wikipedia, even though I think Wikipedia has gotten so much better than it still has a bad rep. But I always like to check.
I think it's a great start. You just need to then go to the sources that are listed at the bottom.
Yeah, and dig. And we dig a little bit deeper, and then we jump into the scientific literature when we can, look at what some other scientists are putting. That's what I do when I do my research for the podcast. And I think I saw this on Wikipedia. So I was like, what the heck is this? Graviportal. So basically what it means is a body built to support great weights. That's kind of the description of it. So you think elephants, hippos, rhinos, their bone structure is built to do that. Now with hippos, their limbs are usually shorter, say compared to an elephant or a rhino, but they're massive. Their bones are massive. So you look at these fat, squatty, short legs, but when you look at their skeleton, it's huge. It's like probably as big as my thigh is how big their leg bones are. So I'll put this up on the show notes too, because it's really impressive. So graviportal, word of the week.
I like it.
Yeah, there you go. Now, the two species we said, the common hippopotamus, their species name is Hippopotamus amphibius. And then the pygmy hippo is Coropsis liberiensis.
Very good.
And they're the ones that are endangered.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about, we talked about the common hippo, the pygmy hippo, yeah, you're right. They're endangered, heading to critically endangered status. And they're very, very small pockets in Liberia,
Mm-hmm.
Sierra Leone, Guinea, and then Cote d'Ivoire. It's that French one.
Mm-hmm.
So I never know how to say that. So really on the west, central west, northwest corner of Africa is where the pygmies are. And that's where they are. Now, there used to be some species or a subspecies in Nigeria, but they've been extinct since the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where they are. Now, again, before we bring our guest on, where else in the world, Angie, are hippos found outside of Africa in the wild?
Chris, this is a fantastic story. I also covered this,
Yes.
but they are currently, there's a population that has grown from 4 to potentially 50 or 60 in Colombia, South America.
No, you're right. So that what happened was, the story is Pablo Escobar, which I want to, for the listeners, if you have Netflix, watch Narcos. It is a really good series. It was one of my favorites on Netflix.
Anybody who grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, it's very fascinating.
Yeah. And I remember, our good friend Anna, who was your lab mate.
Yes, my other bestie here.
Student.
Yes.
Yeah. She told me to start watching Narcos when I was reading her dissertation, getting ready for her defense. I think she was sending me a message. She's like, Dr. M, you need to start watching Narcos. And I started watching this about all the stuff. And she grew up in this. I mean, poor Anna. I've talked to her about it. Growing up when Colombia was pretty scary with Pablo Escobar. But anyways, how this relates to hippos is he did have that private zoo. And like you said, the 4 groups of, now 50 or 60, they think, yeah, you're right. They either let them loose or wandered off. Now, I will say that the Colombia government has gone in and they're castrating the males. So they're trying to stop them from breeding, but they're not, culling them or killing them. They're being left alone. But they are. There's hippos out in the wilds
and they're not.
of South America.
The interesting part about it is they're not totally being left alone, because it's become somewhat of a little bit of a tourist attraction. And but even more so than that, more recently, this bizarre situation has caught the attention of the University of California, out of Santa Barbara, and then in collaboration with San Diego. So scientists have come down to Colombia to study these guys. And what their main objective is, it's really interesting if you think about it, Chris, is this is an example of an invasive species, right?
Yeah, they don't belong there. They do not belong there.
And they are a large megafauna, okay? This is not some little lizard. We all know big and small invasive species can do horrific damage.
Yes.
So size is not necessarily meaningful. However, these scientists are taking this as an opportunity to evaluate the ecosystem impacts for this large mammal living outside of its native range. And that's not something they often get to do. So the researchers will go in and compare the lakes and river streams that this group of 60 is known to live in, and compare it to nearby lakes and rivers where they don't live. And they'll measure things such as oxygen levels and plankton and insects and invertebrates. And they're measuring things like the different audio calls and disturbance of other basically downstream species. Because interestingly enough, obviously in Colombia, the hippo has no predators. In Africa, they, especially baby hippos, can of course sometimes be taken down by lions, but that's not the case in Colombia. And the other kind of crazy thing is that in Africa, hippos battle a lot of droughts. And there's a dry season in Africa where the rivers get really small and especially now with climate change, and we'll talk about more of that in conservation, is this can be not good for hippos, right? Especially ones that have fragmented populations, and then there's competition for resources, disease, all sorts of issues. Well, in Colombia, they don't have a dry season. So these hippos are happy and in nice,
fat and happy,
in like some serious water year round with some serious grass. And studies have shown that they they get bigger and they reach sexual maturity faster. So, so researchers are looking at it, and of course they're working with the Colombian government to try to figure out, is this a problem? If it is, what do we do about it? So it's super interesting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, and it also got me thinking too, like last week with our interview with Dr. Taylor about the little spotted kiwi, went from 5 to 1,500. How does that affect on the genetics? Here you have a population from 1 male and 3 females to now 50, 60. So from a geneticist perspective, it would be really interesting to study and see how that has an effect. But again, they don't belong there. And, you think about all the native species that they're having, they are having an impact somehow. And it's probably not beneficial is my estimate, but you have the scientists that study this out there doing that.
At least do their round 1 verdict. They were going to release some of their preliminary results this past June. So it's very interesting.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm on slide 5 of 50.
I'm on slide 2 of 76. No, just kidding.
It's already. Who cares? Hey, you know what? Just speed it up. It's hippos. This is a fun week. But I think this is a good opportunity to kind of switch it up like you were talking about.
Sure.
And bring on our special guest.
Yes. Stand by.
Ready?
Okay.
All right. Welcome back, Angie. Are you ready?
I am. I would like to introduce the myth that people may or may not thought, the unicorn, my husband, Jonathan Mio. And he's going to, since I decided to bring him on to cover some cool stuff about hippos because he's worked so closely with them, both from a research setting and then also as a zookeeper. So I think I hate to admit this, but I think he's probably going to even be better at it than me, which that's a rarity in our household. So I'll let him have his glory. If I'm covering hippos, I feel like he has to talk about it. Just like if he's ever talking about zebras or horses, I hope he would defer to me. I mean, maybe.
Well, if and when we do an insect, or especially the honeybee, if I don't bring on Ashley, it's
game over. Yes, jinx. So here he is, my better half. Honey, I trust you with my life, my children, and now my podcast.
All right, welcome, John. Hey.
Thanks for having me on here. Thank you, Angie. I really appreciate it. Long-time listener, first-time caller here.
Yes.
Really excited to be on and for you guys to allow me the time to hang out with you and talk about one of my favorite species.
Well, if we do, Angie and I go back and forth about our spouses, and we've really debated on bringing you guys on. Like, do we just want people to think they don't exist? I don't know. But anyways, caution to the wind. Welcome. It's great having you. You've been a big influence on my life and Angie's life. I know that. So, I think the first question I have, and we always like to tell the listeners, why should we care about hippos?
Yeah, hippos are an amazing animal. I mean, top to bottom, all the way up and down. I can't say enough about hippos and how incredible they are as animals. I mean, first of all, you're talking about some of the largest mammals on Earth, land mammals, certainly. How can you not appreciate them? How can you not love them or care about them? As far as what they do for the world, yay, they're big. What do they do for the world? They do a lot of really amazing things. They are habitat builders, I call them, where they live. They live in the water. They exist in the water for most of the day, but at night they're out on land. So they're actually carving paths in the land that later allow animals to come down to the water and to drink. So if you think about Africa, it's hot. All the animals need water, but there are areas where it gets so thick and overgrown, it's difficult for animals to get there safely. They actually create these huge pathways, which is just really kind of cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yep.
Never thought of that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
So they're pretty great.
Yeah.
In the water, they eat on land. They mostly graze on land at night, but they will eat water vegetation.
Mm-hmm.
So they do actually help clear out waterways if they're being overrun with vegetation. So that is actually pretty cool. So water can continue to flow. Again, water is the lifeblood of every habitat, and so the hippos keep that moving. They are tremendous defecators, which is can be a good thing. It can be a little challenging. There's actually the debate's a little bit out on this one as to whether their defecation in the water helps fertilize or is it over fertilizing. So there's a little bit of a balance there, but certainly there isn't. For the fish that are in the water, there's a huge benefit there. The fish will absolutely eat their feces in the water. So, they're just amazing animals. Like I said, they had a huge impact on my life as a keeper, as a caretaker, as an animal enthusiast. So if that for nothing else, that's right. One of the reasons I love them so much.
Yeah, I did find an article, they're calling them the life force of Africa's rivers. And I guess this was kind of the pro argument with that, with their dung helping the aquatic ecosystem, and, I saw an estimate 60,000 kilograms or 132,000 pounds of solid waste per year.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Provided by the hippos.
Oh yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah. And then not only fish eat it, but also aquatic insects.
Yep. Yeah.
Will eat some of the dung.
Absolutely.
So you're right. But then, talking with Angie, she did mention to me that on the other side of the debate, because we talked about this before we started recording, was with the drought and actually with a lot of the rivers getting lower or damming them up, concentrating hippos in concentrated areas. There's the con argument because it is over, nitrogen and other things in the water that's harmful.
Yep.
Right. So I think the con argument's more of, hey, this is man affecting Earth.
Absolutely right.
This is why hippos can't do the role. Right.
So they work well in the environment in which they developed in. And so everything was great. But you start damming up the rivers, you're going to have some problems. There's some unintended consequences there. And you do have a great concentration of feces at that point in the water. And then, there's lots of issues. But if there's a way for everybody to work together, again, everybody needs water, humans need water, but the animals do as well. If everybody could work together on that, then they will help the system out.
Yeah. I mean, they have their ecological niche. Every species we talk about their ecological niche where they belong, and hippos are critical, from what I'm reading, in maintaining some of these ecosystems. So that's crazy. Now, Angie said you did some research, behavior.
Yeah, we did. I did some research. I was lucky to do some research on hippos when I was just starting out my career, and it was actually. The fundamental was acoustic research. So we were studying, I worked with a researcher out of a small college in Massachusetts, Framingham State College. His name is William Barklow, Dr. William Barklow. He was my undergraduate professor, and he was doing acoustic studies on hippos. He was studying how they vocalize and how they hear. And he would go to Africa and do recordings of them. And what he discovered was that they were really interesting. It's a unique feature to mammals that they are they're amphibious. So you think about they live in the water, but they can actually go up onto land. They spend the nights on land. But when they're hanging out in water, you usually think of them are in that position where their head is above water, their eyes, their ears, and their nostrils above water. The rest of them are below water. What he discovered was when they're in that position, they can actually vocalize above water and below water at the same time. So it's really cool.
Wow.
I mean,
That's
if you
crazy.
think about, most mammals certainly cannot do this, and most animals can't do this. Is maybe one frog, some frogs do this, but no mammals can do this. So it's a really interesting adaptation, and it makes sense because hippos will be all the way underwater, and then some will be up on land. Sometimes they bask on land in the sun, and some will be sleeping underwater. And so hippos that are in the water hanging out can vocalize to both parties at the same time. He discovered that they could actually shunt where their vocalizations go. So sometimes they go above water, sometimes they go above water, or sometimes they can do both at the same time. So he would videotape them and have a hydrophone underwater, a microphone that records underwater, and then a microphone above water to record. And then you could see all of that from the videotapes and the recordings. So really, really interesting stuff. So that was
That's crazy. That's
his
crazy.
study that he was doing. What I did, I did a study down at a zoo. And what we did is we used hippos that were there at the zoo to study how well can they hear. So now we can see their vocalizations. We can see that they can vocalize, but to kind of close the loop on it, what can they actually hear underwater or above water or in amphibious position? So we did tests on them, and we essentially played different tones at different volumes and different so different amplitudes, and we wanted to see how soft a sound they could hear, how loud a sound they could hear, and then we played them different pitches as well. So on the range of low sounds to high sounds, what could they hear? And essentially, what we found out was they have about the same hearing that we have in the air. They have that hearing underwater.
Oh wow!
So if you think about, you've ever gone swimming. And
you can't hear anything.
You can't hear anything.
It's like,
there's just some, exactly, some mumbling and some vibrations, but they are actually able to hear underwater pretty darn well. And so it's pretty incredible that and again, it makes sense. It only makes sense they can actually hear underwater. They spend their life under, or they spend a lot of their time underwater. So that was a really cool study. Just the study itself was amazing, but in order to get the study, we had to train a hippo to basically tell us what he was hearing. It's like, how do you do that? I equate it to the hearing test we had when we were in grade school, maybe, where somebody played us a tone, a nurse would play us a tone, and we'd raise our hand every time we heard the tone, right? And when you don't hear the tone, you're not supposed to raise your hand. Well, we want to do that with the hippo, but how do you do that? Well, we trained him to go to a station. So he'd go to a spot underwater on the wall. When we played a tone, he would go to another spot, a different spot on the wall. And so he would tell us, I heard this. If we played a tone and he didn't hear it, he wouldn't move. If we didn't play a tone, he shouldn't move. And it was all done through training, through operant conditioning, in order to teach him that.
Right.
And then we had to do we had to randomize the study. So it was random. We didn't play a tone every time. We put him on a station, and then 50% of the time we played a tone, 50% of the time we did not play a tone. So then we would be able to discern when he was just breaking to go to the yes station, as we called it, the I heard a tone station.
Right.
We could tell whether he was faking us out just to get food or whatever. So it was a really pretty elegant study, and it took a lot of work. It took a lot of training. And I had a lot of great coworkers that helped me out with that, and it was a lot of fun. It really was. It really, like I said, it really formed my career. I think as it was, it really assured that science is the way to go. Studying animals is the way, and in a non-harmful way. This is completely voluntary. It was behavioral training. So he got treats for it. He got rewards for it. He got to play with toys. It was all positive for him, and I think. It showed me these are some of the amazing things the zoos can do. We can learn a lot from animals in zoos. So it was a lot of fun.
Right.
I had a good time.
And something like that, like just off the top of my head, I would say something like that. Now that we know hippos can communicate underwater, or they have really acute hearing underwater. So, that will affect, how we interact with them in their environment. Like, I've seen videos of boats going by, right? And the hippo charging off. And usually it's because the males are so territorial. But, maybe that's like screaming in their ear and they're just
absolutely
ticked off. And they're like, hey, it's loud. Get out of here.
And so they're reacting
who knows?
accordingly, right?
Yeah.
So you have to think about what impacts do we as humans have on them in the various environments. So absolutely. And for me, it's always the more we learn, the better. The more we learn about these animals, the better off we all are, whether we're taking care of them in a zoo or some sort of managed environment, or whether they just exist in the world and we're trying to figure out ways to exist with them. So, it was a great time.
Yeah. So would you say hippos are your favorite animal?
Absolutely.
Or
Yeah,
one
hippos are
of
my
them.
favorite
Yeah.
animals.
That's-
I mean, I've had a ton of animals that I've worked with, mostly mammals, but hippos, they're just so incredible. They do so many amazing things. You think big, big, dumb, slow animal when you see them. They're
Right.
just like, oh,
Yeah.
and a lot of times when you do see them in cartoons or media or something like that, it's sort of as a laugh, it's sort of like to kind of bring a laugh out. But they are incredible animals. I mean, they can run. They are huge. I know you guys talked about their size. They are humongous animals. The males are, again, depends on your count, third largest land mammal in the world. But they can run 35 miles an hour. So
Yeah,
they're
fast.
fast. They can sprint 35 miles an hour, and they can stop on a dime and turn on a dime. I guarantee you, I have seen it. You think, how can an animal that large go that fast and then change? They can. They absolutely can. They are very intelligent animals. They're extremely intelligent animals. So working with them was a blast. We did a lot of operant conditioning with them. And this is an animal that, again, if I don't know how much Angie, really gets into operant conditioning, but you have to work with an animal when you're doing training, when you're working with them in managed care, and nothing typifies that more than the hippo. You cannot get a hippo to do something it does not want to do. I know. Right? You can't. There's nothing you can do to them, and so training them is really, really important. But they are very intelligent. They pick up on it quickly. They also can get very stubborn. So there's things that they do and do not want to do. But they are amazing animals. So intelligent. They're friendly. They're personable. They are. It's always the stories I used to tell when I was working with them. They love to open up their humongous mouths of theirs, and they have humongous teeth. The amazing thing about those teeth is on the outside, on the if you're looking at them, it's rounded on the outside. On the back side of them, it's razors. There's razor blades on the back because they open and close their mouth, and their teeth sharpen each other every time they open and close.
Wow.
So if you were to run your hands down the back of those teeth accidentally, you would cut yourself open. But they love to have their gums rubbed. So you could scrub their gums. You could scrub the back of their mouths. Oh, it's just incredible, and they love it. And if you think about it, in Africa, they go underwater. They just basically have their mouths open, and fish will do that. Fish will go in their mouth and clean up all of the leftover food, and they basically give them a little gum massage. So we would do that same thing for them when we were taking care of them. It was incredible. You get great reactions from them, and they're just they're a blast. They are personable. They throw feces literally 15, 20 feet
far.
Yep. So I know that Angie's always saying, herbivore feces isn't that bad. This stuff's pretty bad. It's pretty bad because of
the amount
of liquid in it. Yeah, I mean it's not like a horse poop or I clean
cows.
I clean ungulate feces all the time, and it's not bad. This stuff it stinks and it is sloppy, and that's one thing about it that they do make a mark. There's no question, and they defecate and urinate at the same time, and it's backwards, so it's you got to be really careful when you're around them.
Well, and as a keeper, you got to clean all that up.
Absolutely, so stains. It's
the negative part.
It's a lot to take care of, but I mean it's just amazing. My favorite animal, just because they're so misunderstood, but there's so much about them that's incredible. They've got great personal relationships. They live in herds, as well as the herd dynamics. I was lucky enough to witness a baby hippo being born. Really one of the most incredible experiences of my life. They do give birth underwater. So in those first few seconds, the baby's born. The baby has to swim up to the surface and grab its breath of air in order to make it. Yeah. So it's a it was a pretty harrowing sight to see, and it was one of, like I said, the best experiences of my life. I mean, obviously, seeing my own children born was pretty incredible as well. But this was one of the first births I saw.
The hippo's better.
It was pretty amazing to see. But a very obviously caring mom. It's amazing to see that stuff. But yeah, they're amazing. I mean, they have, I know you guys get into it. They have a lot of physiological adaptations. The blood sweat on them, so that it has that term because the original individuals who found them saw this red liquid on them and thought that they were just sweating blood, and it's it's not. Obviously, they don't have blood coming from their pores, but it's an incredible substance. I think we still just don't even know enough about, but. We messed with it a little bit when we were when I was working with them, and it was always kind of the plan to study a little bit more, but we never got it off the ground. But
I think that a little bit of what I read on it was they think it might help with like as a sunscreen, so to kind of protect their hides and stuff. But who knows? That would be. Who
knows? Yeah. But we think it has some again, all unproven, again, I haven't done the literature research, but it has antibacterial properties to it. So it's really pretty amazing stuff. Again, you have animals here that have learned and evolved to adapt to a harsh environment, sun and sun in Africa. And, in this day and age with sun is going to be a greater factor for a lot of people. Here you have a natural sunscreen that works out really well. What can we learn from this? How do we develop this? How do we take advantage of this or work with it as humans? There's a lot to learn from our hippo friends.
Yeah, no, they're great animals. They're charismatic, and it's one that, you always love to see it at zoos or in the wild. Angie was talking earlier about how you guys are in Zambia. Now, Angie did say we were going to have another hippo off.
So I don't know
if we want to bring her back.
Yeah, we can do it. I mean, I just I love her so much, and I hate when she loses things.
Don't want to,
but
you don't want to.
But it is what it is. I mean, this is something that there will be no loss here. I'm not sure she understands. I studied hippopotamus vocalizations. I mean, this is what I did for my life for years.
Yes.
So, but whatever. I love her because
she's a little cocky.
Yes, her heart is much larger than her brain sometimes. But that's one of the things that I
that's
I
a
just
good
love
one.
so much about her. So I'll bring her back in for this challenge. Hold on one second.
All right. Well, thank you. Hey, John. It's awesome to hear from your experience. I know we've been talking about this one for a while, and we definitely will have you on again, I hope. And we've had Xander on a couple times. We'll bring in
he's done
Xander's
better than me. So hopefully I just lived up to what he did. But it's a lot of fun. Like I said, being on this side of it as opposed to listening to you guys. But it's a lot of fun. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no. Okay, well, go get Angie, and then let's have the hippo off, and I'll be the judge on who's better. Okay. So here we go. We're gonna see who can do the best hippo impersonation. All right, go. All right, that was the first one.
Oh gosh, you're gonna have to turn that one down.
Hey, hippos are allowed.
Okay,
hippos are allowed.
All right, and here's attempt number 2. You've gotten better, Angie. You've gotten better. You're still too deep, I think. Bass. So if yours is underwater, you win.
Hold on. What about this one? No, I don't know. I always feel like
your initial. I think your initial John's is really high pitched, but your I can't even do it. Is very deep bass.
There it is. Come over here, John.
Oh yeah, John wins. He wins. He wins. Hands down. Yeah. Sorry. He wins. He wins the hippo call. I'm sorry.
It is really good. I just fell more in love with him than I ever thought possible.
You beat me. How about that? So there's a victory
really
there.
Good. And it's good in life to have things. He's doing it. He's doing the Running Man right now. I think that's a dance from the 80s for all the kids, or 90s for all the kids out there that don't know what the Running Man is. He'll do the sprinkler too, and he's really feeling frisky. There it is.
Okay, I've definitely got a picture of that.
Oh yeah, do another one. John, get your face
I will
do dance.
Okay. That will go in the show notes. He reminds me of the guy from Babe, the guy doing the dance with Babe the pig in the movie. What's his name? That great actor.
It's just
yeah, I mean, come on. Corbin Maxey can't even do that good. And Corbin does it pretty good.
I did. I brought a ringer in. I did it for our audience. I could have hypothesized he would beat me. But, it's good for...
All right.
It's an artistic interpretation of what they sound like. That's what my impression is.
Hey, it's way better than I could do. So yeah, you whoop my butt.
When I go back to Zambia, sitting on the river with my coffee, maybe a little bourbon in it or whatever, listening to them for hours, for me, it reminded me of an old man laughing, like old men maybe playing chess. Maybe I don't know if you laugh when you play chess, but maybe whatever telling jokes or having coffee. And that's where, the follow-up part that I'm not so good at. I try to mimic that, and I think it's like I overtry. I overthink it. So, room for improvement.
Yeah. Your tiger impression was good.
Thanks,
your
Chris.
Was
okay,
really good.
all right.
How about that? That one still cracks me up. It's great. It was really great. No, thanks for having John, and that was kind of a special treat for us on this episode. So obviously this episode's going to go a little longer than normal, but there is so much cool stuff to cover with hippos. Quickly on evolution, what is most fascinating is they trace him back to a hippo-like animal that lived 55 million years ago, and then one eventually branched out and became whales and dolphins, and then the other became the modern hippos we know today.
That's so crazy.
So that's just crazy.
Yeah. I would like to see some of those species, what the branch looked like, the branching one.
No, you're right. It's crazy. And they actually, the modern hippo fossils date back about 16 million years ago in Africa.
Sure.
So again, another species that's taken 50-something million years.
Right. And then that little
to evolve into what they are today.
Yeah. And then the little pygmy branched off about 10 million years ago. So if we let those guys go extinct, there's less than 2,500. I mean, that's like 10 million.
It's horrific.
10 million years of evolution that they've been working on to perfect their cute little selves.
Yeah. And just the effects on their ecosystems there. It's just, it's sad. Now, I will say hippos, they have found fossils in Europe and Asia. Cool. Now, this one was cool. There was an offshoot species or hippo-like species in North America that died out about 25 million years ago.
Really? Awesome. That's fun.
Yeah. Atherocotheridae was a species that lived in North America. Now, AJ, this one was really cool. There was a species that went extinct about 1,000 years ago, but it was hippos on Madagascar.
Interesting.
Which is,
wow. Okay.
Yeah. 250 miles away or 400 kilometers away from Mozambique or the African coast.
The East Coast, yeah.
So they're like, how did hippos, because Madagascar is such a unique biome, how did they get there? They hypothesized that they swam there and that they kind of had like a hippo raft or a bunch of them together, that they think that the oceans might have been a little bit lower when they went over there. So there might have been some islands that they could have rested on instead of just swimming 250 miles, so there was probably a little bit on the way. And they were on Madagascar. Now, obviously, humans hunted them to extinction. They had an effect on them when they were there. So I thought that was really cool. The other thing was there was a huge hippopotamus. It was Hippopotamus gorgops. Mm-hmm. And this sucker was 14 feet long.
Wow.
4.3 meters. 7 feet or 2.1 meters at the shoulder. So way taller than me.
Way taller.
And I'm 6'5". Yeah. That is a big hippo. And weighed, 8,600 pounds or almost 4,000 kilograms. Was in Africa and Europe, but went extinct before the last ice age, so about 2.5 million years ago. So there was a huge hippo. Now, hippos in the wild tend to live pretty long, 40 years
50.
old. They can live to be 50 in captivity is generally what's accepted. I call them semi-nocturnal. I know we already kind of talked about that, but during the day, they mostly stay in the water. It helps them cool down, and it's safer for them there. At night, they'll go and forage. And I thought it was so cool. John was talking about them making those paths for other animals. I never thought of that. That makes so much sense.
They have a lot of important niches that they fulfill.
Yeah. Yeah. So they bust through this brush and make these paths down to the water for other species. So John was talking about how fast they are. So this is really quick. I looked this up. I'm like, okay, if you have a hippo chasing you, do you have a chance of outrunning it? Now, 19 miles per hour, 30 kilometers per hour. The fastest human is Usain Bolt, multiple gold medals. He runs about 28 miles per hour or 45 kilometers per hour. He could outrun them. All right. On a sprint, but probably doesn't have the longevity, to run that fast that long. The average human, Angie, we're about 10 to 15 miles per hour. Yeah.
Forget about it. Yeah. I would just have to cross my fingers that there was a tree I could climb, or maybe if I zigzagged left and right enough.
But John said they cut on a dime.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Forget about that.
Stop, drop, and roll. I don't know. But yeah, they're incredible animals. They're great swimmers, hold their breath for 5 minutes at a time. Well, and
Chris, they are, but it is a misnomer too. A lot of times they're actually just walking along the bottom of the rivers. They're not actually swimming.
Right. But they're great in the water. I mean, it's.
But yes, of course, they're designed to move through water.
Right.
Much more gracefully than most animals.
Now, you did talk about lions, and lions will hunt hippos. Hyenas sometimes might, or crocodiles might also hunt them too. But you're right; they usually go for the young or very sick individual. So what I read was they tend to avoid the full-grown adults because it's not worth the injury.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah, it's not worth it for them. Really, the number one threat to hippos is humans, and I read that they're actually being hunted for their teeth. It's ivory.
Sure, I would. Yeah, I would definitely say humans, but also climate change too.
Right. Yeah.
Habitat.
Yeah, that's a big one. Or
change and loss, and waterways drying up, and a lot of that is from humans needing to divert the water one way or another, or from droughts.
Right. Now, kind of talking a little bit about their behavior or their nutrition. So we say at dusk is usually when they leave the water to start foraging. They can consume like 1.5% of their body weight per day in forage.
That's about 150 pounds of food per day on average.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now, what I looked into, Angie, was their digestion. So, they're
Me
inoculate.
too.
Yeah.
We're such nutrition dorks.
I know.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, kind of. But they have what? A pseudorumen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Their stomach has a complex 4-chamber structure similar to ruminants, like the cow that we've discussed here on the podcast. But they're not considered true ruminants because they don't chew cud and then regurgitate and then chew it and swallow it again.
Right. Yeah, it's when they're feeding, they tear at the grass, they soften it with their saliva, and then the stomach takes care of the rest. So
exactly.
Now, this is kind of a rabbit hole I ran down, and I'll make it kind of quick, but they are herbivores. But they do sometimes display carnivore-like behavior. Okay? Now, it was considered abnormal for a long time, but a recent report by Dr. Dudley out of the University of Alaska is that hippos actually eat meat more often than not. And it's just a behavior that they've just kind of not seen or ignored. But they don't necessarily go out and hunt and kill animals. They can sometimes. I know I've seen pictures and I think a video of a hippo eating a small gazelle or killing a small gazelle. They're more opportunistic, and they also have been seen to be cannibals. So as much as John's like, oh, these are the greatest animals on earth, they're cannibals. And
there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with a little recycling nutrients here and there, Chris. Come on.
That's what's going on. They think it is kind of during times of stress, meaning the biome is stressed. There's less grasses, less nutrients, so they'll turn to meat as an alternative. And yeah, so if a hippo dies, they're recycling, so that's where some of that cannibalistic behavior is.
Right. And the other thing too, with habitat fragmentation and habitat loss and rivers drying up, they are probably they're perhaps during the dry season or other times of stress, desperate times might call for desperate measures. So, and it would be interesting too to see if the researcher looked at this in just a few populations, or if this is something throughout different populations of hippos in Africa. Would be my next question to work on the hypothesis of why. I mean, not that it really matters at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Except for that, I just don't. If their digestive system,
it doesn't support. Yeah, it doesn't support the protein breakdown and stuff. They get some nutrients out of it. They also said, like, when I was reading this, and I'll link the article. It's the Diet Secrets of Hippos, Herbivore Cannibal, that kind of talks about Dr. Dudley's work. Sometimes just animals that drown. I know, watching the great wildebeest migration, in the Serengeti and things like that, I've seen multiple videos on that. Some do die, they get trampled and they drown. And so these carcasses float down. Hippos have probably tried it out and said, hey, here's some food. Not just the crocodiles eating it, but hippos are saying, hey, here's an opportunity. Again, they want to eat grass. That's what they want. That's what they're evolved to do. But, surviving in a rough environment, maybe they'll turn to some alternative things. I know I alluded to it before about the males being really territorial, right?
Yeah,
so that's just kind of one of their behaviors.
They definitely are. Male hippos are going to display territorial behavior, and they'll do things such as wheezing, honking, dung showering.
Yes.
Best kind of shower.
Oh, God.
But defensive displays are going to be things such as yawning, which might look nice, but it's actually a threatening signal. And they'll do jaw and tusk clashing, biting, of course, retreating for the submissive male. And while research into hippopotamus behavior and ecology, reproduction is still emerging, there's a lot that we don't know, especially when it comes to the pygmy hippo. We do know that territory males monopolize a length of the shoreline by the river or lake, and they'll tolerate bachelors coming within the territory as long as they're submissive. Non-breeding males will settle outside of the territorial areas and maybe like in a shallow wallow. But fights over territory, like you had mentioned previously, Chris, can be really fierce and inflict a lot of damage because of their huge canines. But typically, by displaying a threatening behavior like the yawn or something is often enough to get another submissive male to back down. It's only during a challenge of a submissive male trying to gain more dominance or more territory. It's not really dominance, but more of a territory that these nasty fights can break out. But they're smart and they know that they know that they can hurt each other. So they don't want it to get ugly if it doesn't have to. And that leads a little bit into their courtship behavior, which isn't super romantic. So I always like the romantic stories. So I won't really go into too much detail about that, but he'll breed her usually between February and August. However, breeding can occur year round. Now, what's really fascinating for me from a reproductive physiologist point of view is for as large as this animal is, we were comparing it to rhinos, right? Its gestation period is only 8 months.
Yeah. You would think it'd be longer,
Isn't
right?
That interesting?
Yeah.
I mean, a rhino, for instance, depending on if it's a black or a white or an Indian, is going to be anywhere from like 15, 16, 17 months or so. So it's just really interesting. I should back up just a little bit that males don't become mature enough to breed until they're 9 to 11 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when we talk about generation intervals, it's going to be minimally 10 years.
Yeah.
And females are around 7 to 9 years as well. Okay. Unless they're living in Colombia and
I don't know what's going on over there.
And having like a ton of nutrients and the land and the water to themselves.
Well, just from a reproductive standpoint, as reproductive scientists, we've studied or probably read some papers on the phenomenon of human women or girls reaching puberty earlier and earlier, and people are wondering, oh, why? And we really, from what I remember, most of my studies, it's diet, right? It's dietary, that we actually have a higher plane of nutrition. So we reach puberty quicker. And that's probably the same thing with hippos. Like you talked about in Colombia, high planet nutrition, grass is available year round. So
maybe phytoestrogens in the grasses. Who knows?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it
I always
could be.
got to get my phytoestrogens in there somewhere.
No, but it does. It does. It's really interesting, that what affects, physiologically what affects one species is probably happening in others. So,
sure. Different locations, right? And different places. So yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. And the other thing too that doesn't really bode well for them as far as their numbers rebounding quickly in the wild is that they usually only give birth to one calf at a time. And this is only every 2 to 3 years. So they have, it's a wild. It's not like they're not like a cow or a horse having a baby year after year after year.
Every year. Yeah.
And then the female will lactate and feed her offspring, the calf, for about 18 months, that's a pretty good investment. And the mother and the calf have a very close relationship. They're often seen cleaning and cuddling each other, which is super cute, and showing affection to each other. But fun fact, how they say mama bear or you're a tiger mom.
Yeah, mama hippo.
You might want to, mama hippo, because interestingly enough, most attacks on humans and other animals are by females prior to giving birth when they're just hangry.
Angry.
And I don't blame them. Angry. I can't even, those big old bones in their legs, I can't even imagine how swollen their feet are. My gosh. They probably can't fit into any hippo sandals. So either prior to giving birth or protecting their young. That's where the hippo mom comes in. They're very tough. But interestingly enough, calves can nurse underwater. They just fold back their ears and their nostrils are closed during suckling, which just goes to show how adapted they are for this amphibious lifestyle. And
where's her udders?
In the back, like a cow. Yep.
Okay.
And because hippos live in a social family environment, males are also very protective over both the female and the calf. And he too will attack things that he sees as a threat.
Right. Yeah. You don't mess with hippos. Respect them.
No. And I know John touched on their blood sweat or the red secretion that covers all of their skin, but what was really fascinating to me when I got to pet Howie is how they're slimy.
Yeah.
I mean, people always think snakes are slimy. Oh no, they're smooth, they're soft.
Yeah.
Hippo, very slimy. And so Christina, the general curator for mammals at Cincinnati Zoo, her description of trying to hold Fiona, the preemie hippo, when she was first born is hilarious. So I won't give anything more away. But the reason I bring this up is because their milk is a very unique color. And as I had mentioned previously in the podcast, so the fluid, this red sweat, that's not really sweat, this red fluid that hippos secrete all over their skin is a combination of hipposudoric acid and norhipposudoric acid. These compounds create sunscreen and are effective of absorbing ultraviolet rays, and then they also prevent the growth of bacteria since they're in the water all the time, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so it produces this red pigment, and so therefore these same acids, hipposudoric acid and norhipposudoric acid, are also found in their milk that the females lactate. And milk generally is a white creamyish color, so red plus white is, I should be asking Xander this, what color does that make?
Orange? No, pink.
Pink. So yes, I can get a photo for you for their show notes. And even John, he did not know this. I was like,
you beat him at something. All right.
Did not know this. But yeah, showing him some of the collected milk, probably from whenever there was a lactating female living under human care or whatnot. It's pink, like pink, which is just super charming.
That's crazy.
They're the only mammal that has pink milk. So very fun.
We did talk about conservation status. Pygmy hippos endangered. They're still expecting a 20% decline over the next 50 years or 2 generations. And luckily, the common hippo is stable for now. Eastern and Southern Africa is kind of their stronghold where most of them are at. Now, are there any organizations or, how do we support hippos, I guess? Who's working out there? Because I know there's some people out there,
yes,
right?
there are. And I first want to definitely give a shout out to Cincinnati Zoo because they do amazing work for conservation and give a lot of money to, so many species. We'd be here all day if I listed them all. And of course, they are home to Fiona, the world's most famous hippo, the preemie hippo. And so,
yes.
But with that being said, I was really fascinated to find out that the habitat that Fiona and her mom live in is the world's most sustainable hippo exhibit. So I just thought that was really cool. It goes to show that not only in giving them amazing care and learning more about their biology, which can help us better save them in the wild, but for their exhibits, they're going above and beyond. They have a state-of-the-art filtration system to process the waste. They have a rotating conveyor belt. My 4-year-old would love this. They have a rotating conveyor belt that removes large items like fecal matter and straw for compost, right? Talk about some nutrient-dense fertilizer, which would be awesome.
Okay.
And the sand filters out, removes dirt, microfibers they use to chemically balance the water. And they have tilapia, which is a fish native to Africa, swimming around in the exhibit to help clean it up, right? Cleanup crew. And the water.
I love the Cincinnati Zoo. Dr. Erin Curry, one of our earliest episodes, does her polar bear research out of there.
I know. Yeah. So, I just have to give them a shout out. The water, they have something like the tank is like a 400,000 gallon cistern, but the water's recycled. So rainwater's collected and the zoo treats and reuses it. So just amazing stuff. They're an awesome organization. Maybe they'll hire me or you.
You. I can't leave New Zealand. I'll have a wife chasing me.
I know,
but
right?
Yeah, you and John. Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Up there and then we'll all go hang out with Fiona.
I know. Well, the episode. Trust me, that's in the making. In the interview, yes. I get a pretty gnarly invite that I'm not going to be able to turn down. So the other organization today, I want to give a big shout out to that we have not yet highlighted on the podcast. I'm very excited to talk about today is the Fauna and Flora International, and they can be found at www.fauna- not backslash flora.org, or they have a great presence on Facebook as well. But interestingly enough, this is the world's first international wildlife conservation organization. So these guys have been around for over 100 years, and I believe they're based out of Europe, England, and they focus on protecting biodiversity, and they're really specialize in working with healthy ecosystems, because they know that that's critical to actually support not only human life, but of course endangered species that live in the ecosystems. They have over 140 projects throughout the world, 321 partners. Maybe I should probably go work for these guys. Jeez.
Yeah, I know.
Including governments, universities, businesses, and local NGOs. And the reason why I picked them today is because they have a campaign to save the endangered pygmy hippo, and with the goal of implementing effective management into Sapo National Park, that's in Liberia in West Africa, home to one of the last pockets of pygmy hippo populations in the world. And Fauna and Flora International have determined that this country basically offers the best chance for preserving the pygmy hippo in the wild. They're working with the government and other researchers to implement long-term and short-term goals to save the pygmy hippo. And these goals include using camera traps to survey the land by rangers to find out where the pygmy hippos are even located and what threats are out there for them, and so how best to conserve the existing populations. They hope that the data gathered from the surveys will be used to build a map of where the pygmies are, and then work with local government, park systems, private entities, mining companies, whoever it is, to minimize the destruction of the hippo habitat where they're actually living. And they're doing this in other countries too, besides Liberia, but that's their main focus is in the Sabo Park. And the other benefit, besides just learning all the secret behaviors of the pygmy hippo that we don't even know, but they live in the habitat where the forest elephant resides. So that's another large megafauna
Yeah.
we've touched on in our and deep trouble that we've touched on in our elephant podcast, our very first one, right? Many moons ago.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Last century, it feels like.
I know, right? Yeah, we'll have to do a reboot. Maybe
Time
we can
flies
focus on the
when we're having
forest
fun, yeah.
elephant instead next time. But anyways, but not only, of course, these big megafaunas, the Fauna and Flora International, because they're working in like saving ecosystems, it's not only the big animals, but the other small endangered plants, animals, everything else in the area they're learning about as well. So their site is amazing. They, like I said, they have over 140 conservation projects. So even if you're not a hippo fan,
That's great.
even if you're not a hippo fan, which I'd be hard pressed to think that that's even possible.
They're not even at this point. They're not listening if they're not a hippo fan.
Exactly,
we'll just assume they just moved on to the next podcast.
But their website and Facebook is gorgeous, and you can consider becoming a member, and you can get a lot of other cool little tidbits for, so
that's a good one.
Check them out, or at least give them a like on Facebook so you can be updated, because they're doing really, really cool things, and they're doing amazing work. They're one of the only groups out there. There's a few other ones, but this is one of the larger, more well-established groups that are working to save the pygmy hippo before it's too late.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really great. This week, since we're doing an aquatic mammal, I thought we would kind of talk about conserving water.
Chris. And I think that when people say, well, how can I help? I can't donate $5 a month. I mean, not a lot of people can, right?
Yeah. Well, this hopefully will save them. So, save $5 a month just in water costs. You and I have always talked about, taking shorter showers.
Or no showers. I'm a big fan of dry shampoo, ladies and gentlemen. If you get greasy like me, try out the dry shampoo. And I recently got my hair cut, and I said to the lady, I'm like, can I use dry shampoo every day? Not shower? And she's like, sure. Now, obviously, she's no researcher or anything, but I was like, okay, cool. That's all I need to hear.
All right. Or do the Angie thing where you don't use a shower.
My
just
poor
go outside
husband,
when
right?
it's raining. I know. Things you can buy whenever you're, replacing things like shower heads. Use low pressure water faucets or shower heads. That will cut down on that. Now, this one was interesting. So if we've got some use for plastic, but I've even seen bricks. But this website that I'm going to link, 45 Ways to Conserve Water in the Home and Yard, talked about taking 2 plastic bottles, fill them up with sand or pebbles, and stick them in your toilet water tank. So it uses less water when it flushes. I've seen bricks. We put bricks in mine to lessen how much water, because you don't need all that water in there to flush the toilet. They did say you could use composting toilets, and I was like, maybe. did we just call those outhouses back in the day? So
you give it a fancy name and you rebrand it.
Yeah, no, you can pass on that one. But here's something I always thought. I thought somebody's told me long ago that hand washing dishes was using less water, when it's actually not true. That if you use your dishwasher as much as possible, make sure it's full.
Right, it has to be full.
You actually you use much less water on average per year.
But don't do what I do once in a while and make it too full. I do this sometimes too with my laundry machine. I fill it too full, and then I have to end up rewashing them. So there is a happy medium there.
Yeah. But one thing too is like when, either shaving, brushing your teeth, doing the dishes, turn off the faucet when you're not actively using it. And I've gotten in the habit of doing that.
Absolutely. Oh, right? My kids know too. It's not even, this is just how we do it.
Yeah. So just develop healthy habits for the ecosystems. Now, Angie, to wrap all this up, and I know this is a long episode, but hey, we had a special guest, so it's okay. Talking about the most dangerous animal in Africa is not the hippo. If we go animal, the most dangerous animal still is the mosquito. Kills 655,000 people per year in Africa.
That's a lot.
Malaria, all that diseases. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Now, hippos are the most dangerous mammal in Africa. Okay. And I know we talked about this with Cape Buffalo. Over 2,000 people per year are killed by hippos. Again, they're territorial. Mothers are very protective of their offspring.
Hippo mama.
More interaction with these mammals in their environment, it leads to a lot of this
Chris,
conflict.
I think a lot of it is the human hippo conflict, which of course leads to sometimes them being killed unnecessarily and or poached. But a lot of it is that most hippos live inside smaller preserves or live near local people where they historically maybe wouldn't have. And so there is going to be more interaction, and especially too as agricultural lands keep encroaching on hippo territory because there's more people to feed. And then sometimes the watering holes dry up, so they have to search for more water. Probably angry because they don't get to have their floaty baths, their nice baths, floating time. I know I would be mad if that was me. So I think that's probably why the numbers have gone up, or maybe now we're just better at keeping track of it perhaps as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's, there's things out there that kill people all the time, more so than an animal. So it's not like, we should demonize animals because there's some conflict with humans when, more people die with car wrecks. What was it? 37,000 in the United States per year?
A lot. That's a way bigger concern. Yeah. But yes, if I was in Africa, I would give the same advice to my friends, especially with kids and pets walking by waterways in Florida. Just don't do it. Yeah, alligator. I mean, it's rare, but it does happen. It's obviously very similar. But however, in Africa, a lot of the local people still use the rivers to do laundry and for latrine use and for they're using their waterways a lot of times in a more intimate way than we are. So therefore, there's going to be some conflicts going to arise when that hippo mama is 7.5 months pregnant and she is hangry. Yeah. She needs that cheeseburger. That veggie burger, I guess, for a hippo. Well, we found out clearly she'll swing either way. Yeah, that's true. On what's available. So, thank you. For us, check us out on Patreon, all that stuff. Just thanks for listening. I was like, thank you for listening to our show. Like, thank you. Seriously. It's awesome that we have hundreds, thousands of people listening. Thank you. That's all I want to say. Thank you. I love you. Thank you. I feel the same way. Thank you. I love you. It gives me, I'm excited to be here talking about hippos today and whatever species we cover next. But today was really special for me and listening to my husband. So now you guys have a little more insight into my, now we got to do honeybee at some point now. I got to bring Ashley in at some point. We'll try to do an insect. Honestly, if you can only pick one episode to listen to, check out Thursday's interview with Christina Gorsuch out of Cincinnati Zoo. It is phenomenal. Yeah, great. It was really great. All right, Ange, I'll talk to you in a few days. That better? Yep. You're doing better. My poor neighbors are probably or my kids are like, what is going on? No, they don't want to know what's going on in there. All right. We're going to stop recording now. Bye, Angie.
Listen, learn, share. Join the movement at allcreaturespod.com.